Hello Summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng and today we'll be talking about a little story, aka the best Viego in the world. What makes him the best? Well, at the time of this video being made, he's sitting at 1674 LP on the Korean Challenger ladder, putting him at rank 1. Not only is this proof that he's the best Viego in the world, he's straight up one of the very best players on the planet. I mean, honestly, I think every League player that cares about ranking up should learn a thing or two from him. Before we dive right on in, I just want to mention that learning from VODs like this is a great resource, but that it can only help so much. If you're really serious about climbing in solo queue, you should head over to ProGuides.com. Our top tier coaches are available around the clock and are always ready to help you learn everything that you need to dominate the ladder. We're even offering courses from insanely talented pros like Core JJ, Aframu, and Xsmithy. These courses can seriously elevate your game, so don't miss out. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what it takes to be the best player in Korean solo queue. Let's start things off with more of a pre-game analysis. Statistically speaking, Viego isn't all that broken of a jungler. Overall, he just barely has a positive win rate, sitting around a 50.5%. Plenty of champions are average overall, but are very good in high elo, but with Viego, even at the top of the ladder, he's around 51%. Yet he still has some of the craziest carry potential in the game. So what makes his stats look so mediocre? The answer to that would probably be his passive. With any other champion in the game, if you're really trying to commit to grinding them, you can go ahead and pick them up pretty fast, and usually by the time you have a couple of hundred games, you should be more than competent. But with Viego, his passive gives him a skill cap that's about close to infinity as you can get in League of Legends. In short, you have to know how to play every single other champion in the game. But that's not all. Sometimes you have multiple souls to choose from, and you have to decide which one is better for the job. You have to account for who has what items, and if you aren't level 6 yet, you also have to remember that you can't go out of their form until you get another reset, or their vessel expires. It's not always a winning play to take over that Yuumi vessel in a level 4 fight for the scuttle. So all of that being said, if you do have the mechanics and game knowledge, Viego is an incredibly hard carry. Just look at our focus for today, a little story. He has a 61% win rate in 343 games at the moment, with his recent record being in the very last few days being 10-4. He didn't just dominate in the lower elo and work his way up and plateau at the top. He's still dominating even at the peak of the Korean ladder. So now that we've talked about Viego in general, let's take a look at the specifics of this game. Viego and Diana are a pretty close matchup in the jungle, so rather than hard forcing 1v1s, a little story's main focus will always be playing around his lanes. His bot lane is in a pretty bad matchup, so ganking there could go really bad, especially if Diana's around. Top lane could also be pretty difficult to gank since Trundle can just run away with his W and pillar. While Akali doesn't have any CC to lock down Irelia, both mid laners want to trade aggressively, so they'll be overextended pretty much the entire time. Once Irelia dashes in, she doesn't have a way to back out. The lane is also very volatile, so whoever ends up with the lead will most likely smash their opponent for the rest of the game. So with all of that in mind, mid should be the lane that he plays around the most. Here's the build that he went for this game. For his runes he ran Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight, with his stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items he goes Ember Knife, Divine Sunderer, Merc Treads, Blade of the Rune King, Sterix Gauge, and Guardian Angel. This is his standard go-to for about almost every game, but against AP heavy teams, he really does like to swap to magic resistance runes, and he builds Wit's End right after Sunderer. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get to the game itself, shall we? Certain measures of skill like mechanics and awareness are always apparent to any onlooker, but an often very underappreciated aspect that only applies in the jungle is how often and how efficiently a player clears their camps. A Little Story does two things very differently in his initial jungle clear. For one, he smites his buff. Viego has a relatively low single target damage early game, with his Q making him so much more suited for killing multiple monsters. So he takes this simple shortcut to get to the multi-target camps quicker. The second thing is he optimizes time over HP when it comes to clearing camps. For the sake of taking less damage on camps, most players will kill the lowest HP targets first. This is especially important at raptors. Since the small raptors do as much damage as the big raptor, it makes more sense from the sustain perspective to kill them first, since they're way squishier. But A Little Story knows that Viego has plenty of sustain in the jungle, so he AoEs down all of the raptors pretty much evenly so they all die around at the same time. It may not seem like a big deal, but compare how fast he clears his red side quadrant to most of the other Viego players. A few seconds of a difference may not seem like a lot, but it can definitely be the difference between making it to a play on time or not. While clearing raptors, he sees Irelia placing a ward, but he perfectly understands how far that ward can reach. Irelia feels safe, thinking that Viego has gone up to the top side, but he sneaks just outside of the ward's vision range, making it to the mid lane. With Irelia having a false sense of security, she pushes up and makes herself a really easy target. Now let's take a look at the execution on this gank. A lot of players may lead with Flash W, knowing that they will likely just result in a flash trade and Irelia getting out alive. This is technically a win, since Irelia being flashless means that she will have to play a lot safer and likely give up CS, but what a little story does is even better. Instead of just blowing his flash right away, he just throws out his E and chases her. With the bonus movement speed, he's guaranteed to catch up to Irelia. If she flashes, he can then flash and get the kill anyway. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you can reach them, it's better to force their flash first. Then use your flash if you can still get the kill, rather than just trade flashes by using yours first and then getting nothing out of it. Neither of those are actually happening here. Irelia actually tries to turn around and get a kill, using both summoners in the process, which is an even better outcome. This is true because a little story still gets a hold onto his flash. But still, he had good intent with what he was doing, and most junglers could learn from that. After the mid play, he goes to his blue buff, and as he's doing it, he likely checks his solo lanes to determine his next course of action, so let's do the same. As he's killing blue, Jax takes a great trade top, forcing Trundle back to base. In the mid lane, Akali is really low, but is able to shove in a wave. On top of that, if Irelia does try to move, Akali still has her TP ready. So all of that is to say the scuttle is basically guaranteed, so he goes for that over clearing his 2 camps in his squadron. After getting the free scuttle, there's a slight mishap. He does Gromp without smite, Diana invades him, and the enemy team pulls off a very well played early dive. He could have completely conceded and got under tower with Jax, or the Jax could have gone in for a stun on Trundle just a split second earlier, causing him to tank another tower shot. But hey, even at the highest point of the Korean ladder, little mistakes still happen. At this point, I want to note 2 of the little things that often go unnoticed that good players do. For one, he constantly is using his W. After reviving from the last fight, he uses it 3 times just to get to the mid laner just a bit quicker. That doesn't seem like the most impressive move, but all I'm saying is that most players don't do it, and most players aren't rank 1 in Korea. The second thing is why he goes mid over his other camps. After that top lane fight, Akali and Irelia both died, but his mid wave was pushing just a bit harder than the enemy's mid wave. But just a bit can make a huge difference in just how the lane plays out. A small push can lead to a massive XP advantage, and also means that the wave may get frozen, meaning that he won't be able to gank Irelia while Akali is still a sitting duck for Diana. Seeing that from base, he runs straight to the mid lane to shove it in. In a very short term, this does give Irelia a stacked wave, but if you look, it immediately bounces back to Akali's side. He then clears some camps and winds up pathing back towards the mid lane. I told you this lane was all going to be about constantly trading, and with him forcing up the wave to bounce back earlier, all those fights are happening where you can easily swoop in for a kill. And that's exactly what happens. This guy is out here playing 5D chess. Akali gets a little bit greedy, trading herself for a kill, but it's still worth it. Anytime you can get assist gold and the enemy team doesn't, you're winning out. Plus, Viego is the type of champion that can really start to snowball with just a single kill, and this is where a little story snowball begins. After picking up the Irelia kill, he sees the flashless enemy Diana attempting to clear the control ward in the bush right below him. Recognizing that she's flashless, he knows that he can kill her in a 1v1, and he forces on her hard, using his flash to land Irelia's stun and bring her down. At the same time, the enemy bot lane is going for an aggressive trade on his bot lane, so now he can possess Diana and use her to pick up 2 more kills on the overextended enemy bot. But he's not done yet. He goes for yet another gank on the enemy mid laner. Diana shows up to counter, but she's not nearly as impactful as Viego, especially without her ultimate. He uses his ultimate to finish Irelia off before assisting Akali and picking up the kill on Diana. Just look at how fast things got out of control for the enemy team. About a minute and a half ago, Little Story was 0-1-1. Now he's 5-1-2 and is without a doubt in complete control of the game. And look at the state of the mid lane. Irelia should win this lane, but with the constant fighting, Akali is just about even in gold with her, thanks to the Cisco that she has been making up for the farm gap. A bit after the last run of kills, he's back to farming the jungle, but he's not only tunneling on the camps that he's killing. He's constantly checking his lanes, and when he sees that the enemy bot lane has potential to dive Jinx, he just reads the play and postures to cover her. Personally, I do think the most optimal player would be to bait Jinx a little bit harder and then go for the kill trade instead. I think he's guaranteed to at least get 1 kill if not both. But there's nothing wrong with erring on the right side of caution either, and hey, this guy knows what he's doing. After covering Jinx, he goes for his clears on his Raptors, but instead of crossing to his top side, he puts priority on putting more pressure on the Irelia. When I said his game plan was going to be playing around mid, that is exactly what I meant. He doesn't just gank mid more than the other lanes, he's constantly putting this Irelia under stress by threatening to gank. In this specific instance, he sees Irelia walk down as he's on his raptors. He knows that she already has a pink in the river brush and assumes that she placed a trinket on the ramp, so he goes to clear both out. While this may not be a gank, clearing out vision is just another way to apply pressure. Think of it from the enemy's laner's perspective. If you've been constantly ganking all game, and your wards are being cleared out, you're forced to play assuming that the enemy jungler is nearby for yet another gank. But at the same time, if you play too respectfully all the time, well, you're just going to be letting your opponent farm up, which is definitely not what you want to do when you have a winning carry versus a carry matchup in the mid lane. TLDR, vision denial equals pressure, just like ganking. With the Kali solo killing her lane, he takes a free Rift Herald. A lot of players would put priority on clearing out their jungle first, especially on a farm-heavy champion like Viego. But a little story recognizes that he needs to unlock the map to get better control over the game. So anytime your solo laners get a kill on their opponent, you should be doing the same. Now we see yet another example of his ability to perfectly read the map. As he's leaving base after the reset, he sees that his bot wave is pushing out. Ganking his bot lane and going for Infernal Dragon is one of the best ways the enemy team can easily get back into the game. With his bot lane including an easy to gank target Jinx, and the enemy bot lane and jungle having tons of CC and damage, it's very likely that that is exactly what the enemy team wants to do. Realizing this, he paths down. You may argue that that's just because his golems are alive, but if he was pathing to farm, he'd be cutting golems to the left, not to the right. He knows exactly what's coming. Once Leona and Diana show up for what they think is their ticket into the game, he blocks him with his timely appearance. With him having a huge 2200 gold lead at just the 11-minute marker, he has a much larger impact in the ensuing fight, turning it into an easy 3 for nothing. He then pins Irelia down under her tower, picking up a 4th free kill for his team. After that fight, notice that he doesn't just stick around and smack the tower. A lot of junglers greed for the extra plate gold, but that's often a big mistake. You aren't generating more gold for your team, you're just spreading the gold thinner between you and your teammates. On top of that, with plates up, you're just giving the tower more resistances by staying in range. He instead makes the right choice and goes for Dragon. He greeds for Scuttle after and pays for it by giving Varus a huge 1000 gold shutdown. And this is your reminder that Scuttle Crab is not worth throwing a game over, but even the best junglers sometimes can't even accept that. His team does actually salvage the situation, but just because it works out, that doesn't really mean that it was the right call. After he respawned from the last play, let's take a look at the state of the map. With no Dragon or Rift Herald alive, the two options are either to go force on a lane for a quick gank and grab some plates before they fall, or clear the jungle. Jinx will easily take bot tower on her own, and no enemy solo laners are on the map. So rather than idly waiting for a gank that may or may not happen, he goes to clear his topside camps. With wolves dead, he paths towards mid, finds Leona in the area, and then brings her down. With her support intercepted, Irelia is an easy target for a Kali to bring down. Again, just another showing of what it means to establish a game plan and then just stick to it. I can't count how many times I've seen junglers say something like, well, I got you a lead, why aren't you carrying? A little story counts mid early game to get a Kali into the game, but he still continued to camp her to make sure that the enemy jungle and the support just don't turn it around for Irelia. This may be the most important thing that you learn from a little story and from this video. Anyway, after those two kills, he drops off the Rift Herald mid to knock over the tower and open up the map, but he just doesn't stick around himself. A lot of junglers autopilot at the tower with the Herald, but look at what's going on the map. Leona and Irelia are dead, and there's no way that Diana shows up and kills a Kali on her own. Also, the tower has 3 plates. So with Herald's charge and a bit of help from a Kali, the turret will fall before the plates go away. Not hitting the tower means that he's free to counter jungle. Counter jungling is just another of those basic but oh so important essential skills for you as a jungler. You just have to remember that when you counter jungle, you're getting a two-way swing on that gold. Every camp that you get is a camp the enemy jungler isn't getting. And when you get to the mid and later stages of the game, a jungler that relies on damage over utility will quickly fall off if they don't have anything to farm. If Diana walks to her jungle and finds her camps empty, she either has to sit around doing nothing or force fights that aren't exactly favorable in a desperate attempt to get some income. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation for her. With plays going away and 2 towers being down, we'll say that this game is officially out of the phase and into the mid game. At this point, we see again his awareness and ability to read what the plays the enemy team are going for. An unaware jungler may clear just raptors, and then just go for the rest of their camps. But a little story knows that Jinx laning against Irelia means that a fight is about to happen. He even walks past the coveted Scuttle Crab, waiting in the bush for the action to start. At first, he's probably planning on saving the Jinx for a clean 1-for-0 play, but when Diana shows up, he knows he has the damage to kill her, so he goes for that guaranteed kill first. This may leave Jinx to the wolves, but he possesses Diana and uses her to kill Irelia as well. Once again, he invades and takes away camps and then resets. A bit later, he's faced with a few choices. After clearing his red buff, he needs to decide which lane that he'll path towards. Pause the video right here and think about which lane you would go for. Akali is by herself mid and is already a pretty safe champ, so it's unlikely that she's going to be targeted by the enemy team. Going mid is a low priority. Rakan is setting up to support Jax, so he could go there. But Jinx is on her way to the top, making her very susceptible to being ganked or dove. So recognizing that, he paths up, killing camps along the way. He once again reads what's going to happen perfectly. Sacrificing himself, he gets his team a 5-for-1 victory in a team fight, which leads to them also taking the last outer tower. This further extends the gold lead and pretty much seals the deal of this game. But it's still relatively early on into the game, and the enemy team isn't ready to FF yet, so the show must go on. After that huge win, a little story wants to go in for the second Rift Herald of the game to close things out, but with Irelia committing to shove top all the way, he instead pursues her, taking out both her and Varus in a pretty close fight. After the double kill, he goes back to taking Rift and again goes for some counter jungling. I know his team is so far ahead at this point that it doesn't really matter if he takes away every possible camp, but it's an important habit to keep up. In closer games, you want to deny any and all resources that you can. And in games where he's stomping, then you just completely shut them down. From this point on, the game is totally over. He goes to the bot lane and finds Irelia, who should be a pretty strong side lane duelist, but completely steamrolls over her. After taking red buff and dragon, he goes up to fight outside of the enemy base, picking up another Tripski. In a half attempt to end, half attempt to pad KDA on the respawning enemy team, the Little Story and co are ace in the enemy base, but at this point that's not even close to being a throw. They are still so ahead that even with Jinx getting caught out a couple minutes later, his team actually looks like they take the fight when they're down in numbers. And for good reason, they easily run over the other team and push to end the game. So, let's do a really quick recap of what happened in this game. A Little Story is a very efficient player, kiting camps and clearing them by focusing the tankiest monster first. Playing a champion like Viego means that he has to be a bit more opportunistic than if he was playing a super aggro jungler that can just force plays hard like Shin or Shaco. As a result, he likes to play around carry versus carry lanes, where a lot of aggressive trading is involved. In this specific game, Akali versus Irelia is the perfect lane to hang around. He gets a kill almost every single time that he visits the lane, getting himself a massive lead over Diana. As a nice byproduct, Akali also gets incredibly fed this game. Once he has a lead, he constantly looks to fight. Whether it's a 1v1 or a 5v5, he knows that he can carry the fights. He forces over and over until the entire team is fed enough to run over the enemy team and close out the game. And that about wraps it up for our analysis of a Little Story solo queue gameplay. After watching how easy he made a game on Korea's Challenger ladder look, I kind of see why he's rank 1. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you guys did, be sure to sub so you never miss out on any of our other content such as this. If you have another high elo player that you'd like us to look at, just let us know down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description as well, where you can go ahead and hang out and discuss the league further, or just hang out and be a part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.